for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the spot!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Matt Ohayon back with you on a Friday, July 5th. Obviously, I had the week off last week because Tony and the rest of the sick team were in Vegas. Sammy, I'm not happy. You should bring me next time. I'm a good time to have in Vegas. I'm a locker room glue guy. That's what you would be. It would be a personality hire, as they call in the corporate world. That's what you would have brought to Vegas. There's always next year. I don't know where it's going to be next year, but I'll be texting your phone away during next year's draft season. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. They are a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. And we're also brought to you by Playground. Play lucky numbers at Playground. Earn your entries daily and return every Sunday for a chance to win the $15,000 in cash prizes with a $5,000 top prize. And on July 28th, one lucky winner will take home 10,000 cookies at the $30,000 finale. Visit playground.ca for details. We're also brought to you by Bittt Tibi beer. Bittt Tibi has launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for the hot summer days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, and 4% alcohol per can. Available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores and C-stores all around the province of Quebec. Ultra light, ultra refreshing. And by Betway, Betway is a leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct and go with Betway. Go on betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. Must be 18 years or older and play responsibly. And finally, all insurance isn't created equal, and you know where to find the right insurance solution for you. Accent Insurance. Accent doesn't sell insurance. They shop insurance for you to find the right product right on the money, whatever your insurance needs, home, auto, or business. Call the Accent team today at 514-363-3636 or go to accentassurance.com. Okay. Big week, obviously, for the Canadiens. And since Stu and I both have been on air, I mean, hell, the last time we were on air together, the Edmonton Oilers were about to head into Game 7. So lots has happened. Stu was on Monday with Tony, I believe, or on Tuesday, and he's back with me today, my usual Friday guest. Stu, how we doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Listen, we got you working overtime this week. Yeah. That's great. So let's start with the news of today. Well, it's not really news, but there was a scrimmage today, a red versus white scrimmage, development camp. Initial thoughts of what you saw, who stood out, who did not stand out, and all that jazz.
Well, we saw why Michael Hage was a first-round pick, 21st overall. He stood out just with his skill and smoothness. I mean, if I had one word to describe him, it would be smooth. The way he skates, the way he carries the puck, his head up all the time. I tweeted earlier today during the scrimmage. He reminds me of Peter Svoboda, the way Peter Svoboda would skate, that pronounce the head up all the time. Scored a beautiful goal, and about a minute later made a beautiful setup for another goal. Florian Jackai had a really good scrimmage. He scored a couple of goals, ran over a few people, and then had a nice goal in the shootout. They had a little shootout competition at the end. And, it's hard. It's 4-on-4, right? So it's hard to, It's not like real hockey. The other thing that was Owen Beck got injured. He was hit hard in the first period. suffered a lower body injury, didn't come back for the second. Hopefully that's nothing too serious. He's one of their key prospects, obviously. And the other guy that really caught me was Owen Protz, defenseman that they drafted this year. He's 6 foot, 205 pounds. He threw about 4 hip checks during the scrimmage. Like, how often do you see hip checks anymore, right? Like, almost never. And we asked him about it afterwards, and he said that at his parents' cottage when he was a kid, he used to watch a VHS video. He's too young to shouldn't even know what a VHS is, but he did, of old hockey plays and guys throwing hip checks. And he loved watching Scott Stevens hit, and he sort of copied his style of play after that. So he caught my eye on the ice just with how physical he was. And afterwards, when he met with the media, he was really comfortable in front of the cameras. A funny kid, got a really good sense of humor. And it'll be really interesting to see, follow him moving forward, because I said he's a bit of a throwback defenseman, a real physical type of player. He's got the little scar on his lip there. I don't know. I didn't ask him what that was from, but I imagine it's a hockey scar. So he stood out to me just in that it's you don't see a lot of hits in a scrimmage like that. But he threw at least 2 or 3 hip checks. And so he's a bit of a throwback guy. He was fun to watch.
And like you said, it is 4-on-4, so and it's
some guys. I mean, like Michael Hage stood out. He looked great, but I mean, if he didn't, I would have been concerned. I mean, what a whirlwind this kid has had since he got drafted last Friday, right? In Las Vegas and coming here and meeting the media and meeting the team and everything else. So if he didn't have a great camp, I wouldn't have been concerned just because of everything he went through already leading up to it. But he did have a good camp. He looked really good. He was, like I said, just smooth is the word I would use to describe him. Really smooth, silky, a good vision. His thing, he obviously needs to bulk up. I mean, you see him, in shorts and a t-shirt, and he's built like a kid. Juraj Slafkovsky was built like a man at 18 years old. Hage, he weighed in at 6 foot and a quarter and 185 pounds. But he's got the frame. I mean, he's going to University of Michigan, which is a smart move for a kid like that. He needs to put on some weight. He'll hit the weight room there only a couple of games a week. Be able to eat well, train well, hit the gym. But he's got that frame that you can tell in a couple of years from now he'll be a 200-pound hockey player.
And it's good because, obviously the Canadians need more. They need 2 things: they need skill and they need size, because they need a couple more bigger players. And having those guys.
Nick Bobroff, an interesting quote, the co-director of scouting with Marinaro, Nick Bobroff. He said, "We're not just in the business of projecting talent. We're on the job of projecting how these guys will physically develop." Mm-hmm. Like looking at a guy, and when they're looking at Michael Hage, they're looking at a kid who they envision being a 200-pound forward by the time he's ready for the NHL.
Yeah, and those guys, you don't necessarily have to be, 6'3" to be considered big, but you do have to take up space. And that's the type of frame, looking at him from the draft floor, watching highlights, watching his goal today, he just looks like a guy, like you said, and like the Canadians believe, that he has a frame where he could fill out a 200-pound body, and he's going to take up space on the ice.
And more than anything in the NHL, size is important. It really is, especially in the playoffs. But it's just strength. You got to be strong. Like Cole Caulfield, I tweeted out a picture a few days ago about him from his first development.
Oh, I saw that.
He looked like a 14-year-old boy, right? He looked like a little boy. And I remember when he got drafted and he walked by me, I was, this kid's going to get killed. Like, this kid's going to get killed if he plays in the NHL. But the Cole Caulfield then and the Cole Caulfield now are two. He hasn't really grown in height, but he's filled out. He's a pretty solid guy right now. And Owen Beck's, talking about him earlier, he's another guy. I mean, he's now measures 6 foot 194. His first development camp, he was 5'11", 182, I think it was. You look at him, I remember seeing him a couple of years. This was his third development camp. I remember seeing him at the first one. Again, he looked like a kid. Now he looks like a hockey player. Like, he looks like an NHL hockey player. He's 6 foot, a solid 194 pounds. Like, there's not much body fat on this kid. So it's just a case of size is really important, but you just got to be strong. And you don't necessarily need to be big to be strong. Paul Byron's a perfect example. Paul Byron was a small guy, but he was strong. He was a strong guy on the ice. Jaden Struble is not huge, strong guy.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing with the Hage, it's a case he's got to get bigger and he's got to get stronger, and he realizes that. And Ken Hughes realizes that. He mentioned that when they drafted him. And they're happy he's going to the University of Michigan again, a really good school. Football background there too. The weight room is impressive. They have strength coaches. They have nutritionists there. As Hage says, he's a little disappointed he won't be able to come to the main training camp because NCAA rules forbid that. But he's taken the right route, in my opinion. I think going the NCAA route, we're going to see him really develop physically. And Jacob Fowler, the goalie, was the same way. Saw him last year at development camp, and he was this pudgy kid. And he didn't look like a professional athlete. He was like a pudgy kid, the kid next door type of thing. And the physical change in him from last year to this year is really noticeable. He looks like a professional athlete now. A lot of that has to do with the weight room at Boston College and the nutritionist at Boston College. I spoke with Fowler's head coach and his goalie coach. I wrote a column about a month ago, and they were both talking about how, he had to learn how, like, when to eat, what to eat, when to sleep, like all these things that kids don't really think about, especially when you're coming up playing minor hockey. You're playing a lot of hockey, and the parents are probably stopping at Tim Hortons or places to grab a bite to eat on the way to the game or after the game or having a pizza. It's different when you become pro, right? It's you've got to everything you do, everything you put in your body, everything you do has an impact. And Nathan McKinnon's a perfect example. He's the most fit athlete I've ever seen. I mean, like everything this guy does, he's a hockey machine. So it's a case of these kids when you're drafting them, they got to learn. They obviously have the skill. Every kid who gets drafted in the NHL, I don't care whatever round, you have skill to get drafted in the NHL, and especially in the first round. But it's more than just that, right? It's about what you do off the ice. And Jacob Fowler in 1 year learned how to be a pro athlete off the ice, even though he's not a pro athlete. He's going to the University of Michigan, and it'll be the same thing moving forward now with other players who take that route. And Michael Hage is another guy. He's going to take that route and develop off the ice as well as on the ice.
That's a really underrated aspect of what you were talking about, just in, learning how to eat, how to sleep, how to whatever, because, I could speak through, I'm obviously not an NHL athlete or an Olympic runner here, but I could say for the 7 weeks leading up to the half marathon I ran in May, I really turned it on, sleeping at least 8 hours a night. Everything that I put in my body was calculated. And then I had a bachelor party in Nashville. And the second I ate a piece of fried chicken there, the next morning I felt it. You feel it in your body because your body gets used to the way you take care of it and over time. So it's a really underrated thing. I hope that Michael Hage won't be on the university diet of ramen noodles, but I don't think
the athletes on scholarships there eat very well. They're well,
exactly.
taken care of. I think the NCAA route is the best route for a kid like that to take. Who needs to bulk up and fill out. But Owen Beck took the junior route, right? And I wrote a column about him earlier today. It's on our Hockey Inside Out website. He played junior, but he was the top academic player in the Ontario Hockey League his first year of junior. He had a 94% average. And he wasn't taking basket weaving courses. He was heading towards a medical school was his goal. If hockey didn't work out, I mean, he was, math and all these hard courses, physics and these kinds of things that he mastered. But he decided after his first training camp and he got signed to an NHL contract that he wasn't going to continue in university. He was going to focus just on playing hockey. And he spoke about how that helped him, especially playing as many games as they do in junior, just learning what you need to do to let your body recuperate after a game, especially when you have back-to-back games. And when you're playing 4 games in 6 nights or whatever they play in the junior schedule, that's something the NCAA kids don't have to worry about. So 2 different paths. And Owen Beck is a really smart kid and a devoted kid. Really wants to. I wouldn't be. He's expected to play in Laval this year, and again, hoping nothing serious happened with his knee injury today. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him crack the lineup at some point this season, depending on what moves he might make before the season starts. If he tries to pick up another top 6 forward or something like that. But one of the things Kent Hughes said is he didn't on free agency day. He didn't want to bring in free agents to take away playing time from kids that need to develop, that are going to be a bigger part of this team when they're ready to compete. And Owen Beck is one of those guys, right? So I expect he will probably start the season in Laval, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see him with the Canadiens at some point this season, because a solid two-way game, great in the face-off circle, really smart hockey player, filled out now. He has a physique now, I think, to play in the NHL. So he's a guy that's going to be interesting to watch this season, whether he's in Laval or with the Canadiens. But I think he'll be he's a guy to watch when the main training camp opens up.
I agree with you. I think there is a spot. I think there's 2 spots, frankly, in the top 6 that are open, and there's possibly more down the lineup because, you mentioned it depends if Kent Hughes wants to go out there and get a top 6 forward. I think, we went into the draft thinking that would happen by then. It obviously didn't. We've heard not from a lack of trying, but they can't go into the season with this lineup. They just can't, especially if you want to improve on last year and you don't want to bottom out again.
No, if you want to have a chance of making the playoffs, you can't go with what they have now. They just don't have enough offense up front. And Owen Beck, I don't see him as a top 6 forward right now. Maybe he will never be a top 6 forward, but he's a solid forward. If he's on your 3rd or 4th line, he's like a younger Jake Evans type of, when I look at maybe a comparison, maybe a little bit more offense to add. But he's one of those guys you can move up and down the lineup, I think. He Memorial Cup MVP, scored 2 goals in the championship game, won the OHL championship the season before in the regular season, or the playoffs, I should say, with Peterborough. He's got a lot of games under his belt. He's got a lot of experience under his belt, and he was great. The first development camp he came to a couple of years ago, he was great during training camp. And remember that season, he also got to make his NHL debut. He got called up on an emergency basis to play a game in Ottawa. And he spoke earlier this week when we talked about how good of an experience that was to get that one taste and experience the NHL lifestyle and like see the hotels these guys stay in, see the charter flights they take, see the suits they wear, see the restaurants they go to, like just to get that quick taste of what it's like to be an NHL player and the environment of playing in an NHL arena. He didn't play at the Bell Center, he played in Ottawa, but still just to get that taste, I think, of what it's like to play in the NHL, I think it's just huge.
Yeah, for sure it is, because if you really, because let's not pretend that everyone in the NHL loves it and it's their passion. Some guys just happen to be really good at hockey.
Yeah.
And this is their job. You know who that reminds me of? Reminds me of Nathan Beaulieu. He just was a guy that just happened to be really good at hockey. He never struck me, or later on in his career when he was falling short of expectations and he was still with the Canadians, that, I always said Nathan Beaulieu, if he just worked on his shot, took one summer and just shot pucks all summer, worked out his forearms all summer, this guy would be unbelievable. But he never put in the work. And he ended up just making his coin in the NHL. He was good enough to get by, and he made himself a little bit of a career.
Yeah, he made a good chunk of money when he was here.
Exactly. But then when you give a young player that taste and hockey is truly their passion and they still have that passion inside them, that's just an extra motivator. Not that you need more motivation, but it is an extra motivator for such a young and impressionable player.
But sometimes giving them that taste and then taking it away is really effective, right? Like, here you go.
Exactly.
It's like sitting down. You never had a rib steak before. Here's a rib steak. How'd you like it? Okay, now you're not going to get another one for 6 months. It's sort of,
now you're eating cans of tuna for the next 6 months.
So it's I think that it's a really effective thing. And I think it was a smart move. It was an emergency call up because of injuries. But I think the fact they did call him up as the emergency call up, I think speaks volumes about what they think about his game. Marty Lapointe, after they drafted him, said he gets all A's in the classroom and he gets all A's on the ice. He's good on both sides of the puck. He's just a really, really good all around hockey player. And you can tell, like, just when he walked in, I think it was Tuesday, I guess, when he came in the meetings, just wearing shorts and a t-shirt. I looked at him, I went, wow, that's not the same Owen Beck I saw a couple of years ago. This is a kid who looks like a professional hockey player right now.
And the more the merrier, because I've always said it, before we'll talk about the draft and more, not really about the draft. It's already a week old, but we'll talk about things around the draft. But I said it, I think leading into the draft, that offense, the defensive prospect pool, they're good. They can wait. They could wait a few years, see who hits, who doesn't, who's going to be a part of the future, who's not, whatever. They have the cupboard is overflowing. The offensive cupboard before the draft, it left something to be desired.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be, give it 1 or 2 more years and Owen Beck, it's going to be time for him to show something. Are you a part of this or are you not? And hey, if he could be a part of it, all the better. all the better, because anything could happen. Anything could happen across an NHL career, and you never know where players can go, because vibes are at all-time high. But we've seen young players get traded before, and young prospects get traded early on. So if he can carve himself a slot into the Canadiens' future, even better. Just get younger and get cheaper on the offensive end.
Well, that's mentioned earlier. I mentioned trades. That's why I'd be surprised if Ken Hughes doesn't make a trade before the season starts and bring in another top six forward. Whether it's a young top six forward or a young guy with potential to be a top six forward, there's all that talk about Zegras as one of those guys, or maybe it's an old, like Jonathan Marchessault was given an offer. Kent Hughes offered him more money than what Nashville did, but less term. I think Hughes was going to go 2, maybe maximum 3 years. And Nashville gave him 5 years. So you understand why Marchessault went there. But Marchessault is going to be 38 at the end of that contract. So I can see Hughes making a deal, as I said, either pick up a young top six type forward or a guy with the potential to be like Kirby Dach and Newhook, or an older guy with 2 years or 3 years left on his contract to come in. Because Hughes said, when he met with me on Monday, that this young group has worked so hard and gelled together that they deserve to be given a chance to have a hope of making the playoffs, right? And if they go into the season with what they have now, I don't think they really have a hope of making the playoffs, because they're just not going to score enough goals. They're not going to get enough offense from their forwards, and there's going to be young defensemen playing. There's going to be some question marks on defense. That's why I think he wants to give this team. He also spoke about just organically this team's going to get better because the continuity they've had and the group they're going to have together for quite a while, understanding Marty St. Louis concepts better, understanding how to play together better, understanding the systems, growing up and building together. And I believe that's true, but they also need to get a little boost. I think we look at the lineup and we see the forwards and we're like, where are the goals going to come from? And the players are doing the same thing. I'm sure Nick Suzuki is looking and saying, we need more goals, and players want to win. They don't really, they understand the rebuild, but they want to win now, right? NHL careers are short. You never know what can happen. You never know with injuries or whatnot. So that's why I'd be really surprised if Kent Hughes doesn't do something. And he had a great quote on Monday as free agency opener. He says, sometimes when you do something on the free agent market, especially on day one, just because you think you have to do something, you regret it. And I think I mentioned this when I was on with Tony earlier in the week, and Carl Alzner was the first guy that jumped into my head, because I think Mark Bergevin that day felt he had to do something, and he signed Carl Alzner, and we all know how that worked out.
Yeah, it's I was talking with friends and just people just asking me, what do you think the Canadiens should do? And we're talking hockey. I always said, go to a guy like Steven Stamkos. Excuse me. And I know people were some sections of the fan base were against that because it's not what they need and blah, blah, blah. But I'm of the camp that this, what Kent Hughes said, they deserve a chance to push. They've worked hard. They've developed. Now it's time. They've done the work. Now Kent Hughes needs to do some work and push it along. So I said, go to a guy like Steven Stamkos, give him 3 years, $10 million a year. Like for the next 2 to 3 years, that's pretty inconsequential to what you're working towards, down the line. Anything more than that, I would understand why they would be apprehensive.
Yeah, and I think with Marchessault, that was the case, right? First of all, he's a Quebec kid, right? Coming back home, he had interest in coming here. He said, he was interviewed by TBS Sports and said that he had good talks with the Canadiens and they came close. And then he ended up going to Nashville. And Kent Hughes doesn't like to talk about players and contracts, but he did talk about this because Marchessault brought it up first. But yeah, he would have offered, maybe $6.5 million instead of, I think it was 5 he got for 2 years instead of, but you understand why Marchessault is going to take the 5-year deal, especially he's 33 years old now. It's probably his last contract, right? So you're going to take the money. But as you say, there might be a guy out there, or I think Hughes was hoping there would be a guy out there that he might do that, whether it was a Steven Stamkos and say, okay, you're offered $8 million here. We'll get, I don't know if he would have gotten that high, but maybe another free agent was offered 6 somewhere. We'll give you 8 for 2 years. And well, actually not 8, because that would be more than Nick Suzuki, and I don't think they're ready to go above Nick Suzuki's yet. But $7 million or whatever to a guy who was maybe offered a longer term deal at $5 million. But the thing with Ken Hughes, he's a smart guy. Him and Jeff Gorton have a plan, and they're sticking to it, and they should be applauded for that, because Now, when Marc Bergevin was so many, it was just patchwork here, patchwork there, patchwork there. There was no real long-term vision. In his defense, he also had the pressure that they were supposed to get in the playoffs. There wasn't Jeff Molson didn't go back and say, okay, we don't care if we don't make the playoffs, we're going to rebuild. That sets a whole different template for how you're going to build an organization. But Hughes and Gordon have a plan, and they're sticking to it, and it makes total sense. Like, they've got all these young guys in that same age group, and they weren't ready to offer. Like, if they just look at Brendan Gallagher's contract, that's a weight on the team right now, right? And Jonathan Marchessault, let's talk about him in another 2 or 3 years, and we'll probably might be saying, man, good thing the Canadians didn't offer him 5 years. He's 37 now, and he's scored 10 goals last year or something like that. Maybe that won't happen. Hopefully with Jonathan Marchessault it doesn't. But that's the thinking that Kent Hughes had going into this, that he wasn't going to give long-term money to a veteran guy. He'd rather give that long-term money to Juraj Slafkovsky, which he did.
There will come a time when he does do that.
Yes.
He's going to give out. There's going to be a time where Kent Hughes will give out that insane contract, but that's going to be at the point that where Marc Bergevin was at when he gave Josh Anderson that contract. He said, I'm going to go all in right now, and if it doesn't work, this contract's not my problem. So it doesn't matter.
I think the Habs right now are probably 2 summers away from really going hard at the free agent market. And as Kent Hughes has said, it's his job to make Montreal appealing to free agents, despite the taxes here, despite the weather, despite the language. And, he said, his days as a player agent, players are the happiest when the hockey's good. If you're on a winning team, if it's snowing outside, it doesn't seem that bad, right? If you have to dig your car out of a ditch, it doesn't seem, when winning solves a lot of things, right? When you got a winning team, a lot of things don't bother you. It's like, if you have a job where you really like, things are going good, you're happy. And if you have a job where things aren't going bad, you're miserable. So it's the same with hockey players. So he's and I think it's become a real appealing market, more so to even younger guys and older guys, because I think a lot of the things like the weather and the language issues and that are more an impact on the wives and the kids than they actually are on the players, because the players live in their own little bubble and they travel together and they're on the road half the year anyway. But it sort of reminds me back when the Nordiques were around. And young single guys wanted to go play in Quebec. It was a great place to play if you were 23, 20. That's Joe Sakic, 23, 24 years old, and a single guy and playing in Quebec City. It'd be a lot of fun. And I think it's the same thing in Montreal with these young guys. I think they enjoy being in. They obviously enjoy being in Montreal, or they wouldn't sign. Cole Caulfield wouldn't have signed for 8 years. Nick Suzuki wouldn't have signed for 8 years. Slafkovsky wouldn't have signed for 8 years. But it takes a special type of player to enjoy playing here with this huge spotlight. Most NHL cities on July 5th, podcasts are not talking hockey, right? We talk hockey 12 months a year, and I write about hockey 12 months a year. People in Montreal cannot get enough. I mean, the parking lot in Brossard today for this development cap scrimmage was full. The stands were almost full. The Canadians had the game on their YouTube channel, so you could watch it on YouTube. So it's a different environment here. And the Canadians realize that, and Kent Hughes realizes that. And when they draft players now, or acquire players, they make sure that they have the mental build-up, the mental capacity to handle all that. And, we've seen that with Juraj Slafkovsky. We've seen that with Nick Suzuki, with Marc Bergevin who acquired him. We've seen it with Cole Caulfield. We saw it a little bit today with Jacob Fowler, who spent a lot of time signing autographs after the game and posing for photos and seemed to really be enjoying it. So that's another thing that Kent Hughes is factoring in when he's doing this. You have the guys who are able to play in the very, very bright spotlight here in Montreal. It burns up a lot of players.
You mentioned the taxes, and I don't know about you, but whenever I see that, it happened the past 5 Stanley Cup finals. 4 of the past 5 Stanley Cup winners, 0 state income tax. It's unfair. It's an unfair advantage. I don't really think it's an unfair advantage at all, because like you said, if you're winning and the hockey is good, that's where players want to go. Kent Hughes said it himself as a player agent. And just, if Edmonton won Game 7, are we talking about taxes again? Like, this is a storyline that it's just one of those that it's just every summer we seem to hear about it. And every summer I roll my eyes at it, because I don't think these guys are smart guys. They make a lot of money. They have agents who can find accountants that play ball, and they have different homes and different addresses. Kirby Doc, I don't know. I've seen him around the city. Not to throw him under the bus. I don't know if this is anything, but his car still has an Illinois license plate. So, there's workarounds for everything. I don't buy this tax thing, and
it definitely is an advantage when you're in a non-tax state, I think. Plus, the non-tax states are Vegas, Nashville. Tampa,
they're attractive.
Winnipeg is a
attractive
non-tax
cities.
state. If Winnipeg was a non-tax province, I don't know how much of an appeal that would be to players. I'll go to Winnipeg and I don't need to pay taxes. That might not be the same as going to Nashville, right?
Right.
So I think it is an advantage. I think without a doubt that yes, there are ways to work around the tax situations and that. But it's a lot easier when you just don't have to pay the taxes in the first place, right?
Yeah, that too.
So, and you're right. I mean, Alan Walsh, who's a very vocal agent on Twitter, and I've spoken with him about this before, and he actually posted a tweet earlier this week explaining, I don't know, I'm far from a financial expert, but how guys making this much money can defer a big chunk of their salary to years later, and then they take it out at a straight 25% tax rate. That's one thing they can do. And I remember Alan Walsh told me once, if you have an accountant, if you're paying like 45% tax anywhere in the NHL, you need another agent and another accountant because it shouldn't be. There's ways to work around it, but it's obviously easier if you don't have to work around it, right? You just don't pay the taxes. You don't have to pay it. So it definitely is an advantage, but I think it's also multiplied. No tax, beautiful weather.
Right.
Shea Weber in Nashville, you're not the media focus in Nashville is not anywhere near on the Predators, anywhere near what it is like here in Montreal. And I remember when Shea Weber got traded to the Canadiens, and I called Adam Vignon, who was covering the team at the time for the Tennessean, just to ask him a bit about Weber, what kind of guy he is, and that. He's a really quiet guy. Doesn't talk a lot. He says, but he's lucky here because I'm the only guy who covers the team every day. So there's time periods that Shea Weber would go 2 weeks, and you wouldn't have to do an interview. Yeah. It's not the case in Montreal. So I think you factor in the no taxes, the beautiful weather. Nashville's like my favorite city. I told you before you went, and I loved it. And great place to live. Florida, Vegas is another non-tax state. So it's a combination of no taxes and the weather and less of a spotlight on players. So I think it is an advantage for teams.
Yeah, I think the location.
Yes, location plus
the location of the actual city.
Taxes, yes.
I think that's more the case. But anyways,
and Dallas is another one. And Dallas is another. Texas, no state, and Dallas is a pretty cool city too, and not a. And if you live there, I mean, all the spotlights on the Cowboys, right? Or
I mean, it's crazy on ESPN. This is a network that has the NHL rights.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably their most popular show after the Pat McAfee show is First Take. It was like the day of the Stanley Cup final, the day of the Game 7, and what are they talking about on First Take? Who is under more pressure, the Dallas Cowboys or the Los Angeles Lakers to win their next championship? Yeah. And I'm going, my God, it's June. What is going on? Like the Boston hasn't even been able to wipe off any of the alcohol or the beer off the trophy, the Larry O'Brien trophy, and you're already talking about the Lakers. What's going on?
Well, the way we talk about the Canadians 12 months a year here, they talk about the Dallas Cowboys 12 months a year there. It's the team. I've had people saying, how come you write about the Canadians in July? I said, because people want to read about it. Why are we talking about the Canadians right now? Because people want to hear about it. People, and people in the city, as I've said many times this podcast, they cannot get enough about the Canadians. It's like Habsitis has taken over the city. There's just it's an appetite to just they can never get enough. They just want more and more and more. Even a development camp. Like out of this development camp, there maybe 3 of these guys will ever play for the Canadians, 3 or 4, who knows, right? But it's the people just can't get enough.
You know what? And you know what adds to that excitement and the craving for just nonstop news is exactly what something like last week, the draft happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have not seen since the Stanley Cup final run, and I couldn't even name you a time before that. It was I can't name you a time before that where the vibes around Habs Nation, it just seemed like we're at an all-time high. It started with Demidov, and then, there was maybe...
Well, it started with Celine coming out to announce Demidov.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And then Demidov gets selected. Everyone is over the moon thrilled. And then, maybe 2 minutes of disappointment when Cole Iserman goes a pick before their second pick. And then just... ESPN or Sportsnet, wherever you watch the draft, after they say Michael Hage's name, they shoot up all the highlights on the screen and everyone's back. Everyone is so excited again. I have never seen just so much excitement like this around this team since the Cup final. And you name me a time before that.
And then you go to day 2 of the draft and they draft Saku Koivu's kid.
Right.
So there's another one that Habs fans are excited about. But no, you're right. There's been a level of excitement, I think, about this rebuild, or a little excitement, at least acceptance, right? Canadiens fans have accepted what's happening. You see the reaction at the Bell Center, the team getting standing ovation, leaving the ice after missing the playoffs for the 3rd straight year. People are smart hockey fans here. They see the plan. They understand the plan. They understand what they're doing. But the longer this goes on and they miss through 3 playoffs, and some fans are like, I don't know about this. And then Demidov, right? Like if they had drafted another defenseman with that pick, I think fans would have, patience would have really thinned out. But the fact they drafted Demidov, the guy, when was the last time the Canadiens had a forward that brought people out of their seats? And he looks like the kind of guy who could. I mean, Max Pacioretty scored 30 goals for a lot of seasons, but he wasn't the type of player who brought anybody out of their seats, right? He was just a shooter and a scorer. So that excited people. And you say, you're right, Michael Hage. I mean, I didn't know much about Michael Hage of anything before they drafted him. Just, the pre-draft research I had done, I read a bit and saw, I heard about his dad tragically dying in that pool accident and whatnot. But seeing him on the ice live this week for the first time, I go, okay, this kid's got, he's got some silky hands and good skater and good vision. I see why they wanted him in the first pick. Unfortunately, Demidov wasn't at the camp. He doesn't have a Canadian visa yet. He only has a U.S. visa, and Koivu's son wasn't at the camp either because he figured it was better for him just to stay home in Finland, keep his training there while he gets ready for the Finnish season, which starts pretty soon. It starts a lot sooner than the NHL, rather than flying over here and flying back. I understand that he would have made there. So there's I think the excitement level or the anticipation level has been there since they sort of started this rebuild and people saw a plan, but I think it definitely got a bit of a boost. And I think it needs another boost, though. That's why I think Ken Hughes needs to make another deal. If they go into the season with this team they have now, and they start the season, let's say 2-8 or something like that, or 3-7, people aren't going to be happy, right? They want to at least see a team that has a chance to get in the playoffs this year. They don't want a lottery pick team again for 3rd or 4th straight year.
And a name. Let's it's the summer, let's get crazy. I was just looking down a couple teams lists, and a player that the Canadiens could bring in, he's gonna be a UFA at the end of this coming season. It really all depends on what this team is going to be and where they will be, but I could see a Nikolai Ehlers getting dealt, let's say 6 weeks into the NHL season. Things aren't going so well in Winnipeg. You look at their roster. If you could look at Cap Friendly for one of the last days, I think this is the second to last day you could look at Cap Friendly. They just have a ton of unrestricted and restricted free agents coming up at this coming off season. And maybe they want to get something for him. And that's not necessarily going to mean the Canadiens are going to be buyers throughout the season. You'd probably expect this move to come in the offseason at some point. But I don't know. It just feels like the further you get away from that July 1st date and the draft, those two couple dates, the further you move away from that, the more likely it is you are going to head into the season with what you have. But I really do think Kent Hughes will do something. There's so many names. There's the big three names that keep getting tossed around: Martin Necas, Trevor Zegras, and Rutger McGroarty. Rutger McGroarty would bring some excitement, but I don't think that's the type of shot in the arm this team needs right now. So it's really, if there's going to be two of the available, it's really a 2-horse race between those two guys, at least in my opinion, from what makes sense.
Yeah, Zegras might be too high a price that Anaheim's asking for him. There is that connection with Cole Caulfield being his friend. He is in that age group. He's 23, the same age group where so many of the Canadiens players are. Makes sense. You mentioned Nikolai Ehlers as a guy, consistent 25 goal scorer, right, in the NHL, 28 years old. And that's what I was saying earlier, guys that more veteran guys, and you say coming into free agency, Winnipeg's not going to want to lose them for nothing, right? And Canadians have a lot of things that other teams want. A lot of young defensemen who don't make a lot of money, right? In the salary cap world, they got a lot of draft picks. There's a 2 first, 2 second, and 3 third, I think, next year at the draft. So Ken Hughes has a lot of things he can deal, especially the teams that need some young players that don't make a lot of money and have the potential to be really good players. And the Canadiens have quite a few defensemen like that, and they have quite a few draft picks. So that's a type of guy, maybe you make a deal for a guy like that and you can sign him to a 2-year extension, right? Possibly. And so that would make like another move that would make sense. But again, I think that Kent Hughes realizes that he's got to do something else to give these young guys hope going into the season that, yes, we might not get there, but we're going to get a lot closer to playoffs than we have the last couple of years.
And hey, we've always said it. We'll say last year maybe 75 to 80% of games the Canadiens were in that game. How many times, if you just add 20 or between 20 or 30 goals, call it 25 to 30 goals. Let's shoot for the moon here. You add 25 to 30 goals to that lineup, you're going to win a lot more. You're going to win a few more, at least, games that you were in it, and you take that moral victory. That's just you're
already adding one top 6 forward in Kirby Dach coming back, right? You didn't have him. Only had him for 2 games last year. Knock on wood for the Canadiens. Hopefully he can finally stay healthy. He's had injury issues going back to when he broke his hand there at the World Juniors. When you remember the Blackhawks, he's missed a lot of games the last 2 years. So that's one top 6 forward coming in. If you can add another one, there you maybe add 40 goals between those two guys, right? And that's a lot of those games that they lost by a goal or lost
in overtime.
In overtime, you have another threat to put on the ice in 3-on-3 to score. So Lane Hudson coming in this season, I'd be surprised if he doesn't at least start the season with the NHL. What a weapon that kid will be in overtime on 3-on-3. I mean, that 3-on-3 is made for him. Him and Cole Caulfield together in 3-on-3 with Nick Suzuki out there. That'll be something to watch. And then you can throw over Mike Matheson and Slavkovsky and over on the second unit too, right? So, but I think as we've said, I think they've got to get at least one more forward who can score, and hope Kirby Dach can stay healthy throughout the season.
And a big problem, obviously, 25 to 30 goal scorers aren't just teams aren't just giving them away, and it's really a special situation that one is on the market. And even then, they're still not giving them away just because they're on the market. But the big problem, I think, which we saw in free agency, or at least was it was a marker, was a lot of teams are kind of just saying, screw it, we're going for it still. They can't accept that, they should probably, the educated decision would be to take a step back. I look at the Tampa Bay Lightning. You just let go of your 16 years captain. He's coming off of a 40 goal season. It's not he's not coming. Steven Stamkos was not a 16-year-old dog that is hanging on for dear life. This is a guy who scored 40 cookies last year. That's a lot of goals. And they just threw him to the side in favor of Jake Gensel, who's a very good player, but just a lot of odd moves being made, and Nashville was an interesting one because they made the playoffs last year, but frankly, they were last in the NHL or something like that in January, and then they went on this crazy run and they made it. So they decided to go all in. Let me tell you, I watched the Nashville Predators live in Game 6. That was not a very impressive hockey team. Now they added, 80 goals between the two guys, so that'll definitely boost them. But just a lot of teams just not really saying, oh, let's build, let's do something, let's retool. And even the ones that are retooling, like I took a look at Calgary's situation, there's nobody on that roster you want. Nobody. So your options are slim. So you're going to kind of, if you don't go after another forward or go after a forward or acquire a forward, you're going to have to somehow sell this to the fans.
Kadri's a guy in Calgary. Some other teams might have some interest in. We're talking Marchessault and Stamkos. It's 82 goals between them. Marchessault at 42, Stamkos at 40. Imagine that had been added to the Canadians, the excitement that would be going on here. So in Nashville, adding 240 goals. How many teams add 240 goal scorers to their team during the offseason?
Crazy.
Having said that, you go back through the history of free agent signings on July 1st. There's a lot more really bad moves than good moves. A lot of GMs have lost their jobs for moves they made on July 1st, right? And some of them are panic moves. A lot of them might be panic moves, and that's Kent Hughes wasn't going to panic this year. He wasn't going to take that huge risk. As I said, a couple of years down the road from now, he won't panic, but he might be willing to take more of a risk on a free agent if he thinks by the time the Canadians are a playoff team, like have proven that they are a playoff team, then the next step is to be a championship team, right? And that is when Kent Hughes will be ready, I think, to spend money and offer term and pay somebody more than Nick Suzuki, right? Because Nick Suzuki's salary won't remain the highest salary in the team forever. But I still think they're probably 2 years away from that. But again, to repeat myself, I think they need to do something this season just to give this team a boost.
You know what team, just as we wrap up, was really a weird July 1st, and just the way they've been going about their rebuild, it's been the Chicago Blackhawks. I don't understand it. They're just dishing out dineros like it's coming out. It's coming out their ears. Tyler Bertuzzi's a great player. He's a really good player. But 5.5 for 4 years. Do you really expect to be, competing in that little time? Do you know where you were in the standings? Your team is really bad. They're littered with players that are over 29 and older. It's crazy what they're doing in Chicago.
Yeah, it's sort of, you wonder what the plan is, right? Like with the Canadians, you see the plan. Some other teams, you wonder, like, what are they doing? I mean, you can include the Leafs in that in a bit of a way. It looks like maybe they're going to end up re-signing Mitch Marner and try again with the same 4 and expect a different result. It's the I don't know. They brought in a new GM, the Leafs. They brought in a new coach, but it seems to be the same strategy moving forward. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But again, I've said many times, you can agree or disagree with moves that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton are making, but I think if you're willing to look at it, you can understand the thinking behind it, right? Like it's not like, why the hell did they do that? Like you can understand why they did it, right? We'll find out if it all works out down the road, but they have a plan, and the decisions that they've made, I think, have been really smart. People talk about their Arturi Lehkonen trade. That doesn't look too good right now. Justin Barron hasn't developed the way they hoped he would, but he's still young. He's still a young defenseman. Might surprise people moving forward. This is obviously a huge, huge year for him coming up. I mean, and interesting to see what the Kings do with him, because he has to clear waivers if they want to send him to Laval this year, right? And they're going to lose him if they put him on waivers. So maybe he's a guy that's involved in a trade that they make to try and bring in a top 6 forward. He obviously wouldn't be the key component, but he would be a throw-in in it. He was a first-round pick. He's not that old. There's still potential there for him. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with that going forward.
Well, he's the type of player that if Kent Hughes was GM of any other team, he'd be looking at a Justin Barron, reclamation project. That's just the type of guy he is.
That's why they got him for Lehkonen. I mean, they figured, 25th overall pick. He also shoots right, which is a huge, huge thing. Mike Johnson had a good line on TSN the other night. He said, have your kids grow up to be left-handed pitchers or right-handed defensemen. That's where the money is. And so Justin Barron, there's it wouldn't be, Justin Barron for top 6 forward. No, it'd be Justin Barron and the pick and whatever else.
Yeah, of course.
Potentially land a top 6 forward. But, he's only 22, Barron, right? He's still a kid. I mean, he wasn't drafted 25th overall by Colorado because he's no good. I mean, he's obviously got skill. He's looked to me in the NHL. To me, he's looked nervous when he almost afraid to make a mistake, and that's a really hard way to play. And it's surprising that he would have played that way with the Canadiens when they were giving young players the leash to make mistakes during the rebuild. And he still looked really nervous at times carrying the puck and unsure of himself. So if he can build that confidence or gain that confidence moving forward, there might be something there from him. He played 32 games last year in Laval, a place for him that maybe gain some confidence, which is huge. So again, I mean, the Kings can't keep all these young defensemen they have, and I said he has to clear waivers, so he's a potential guy as part of a trade to bring in another forward.
And you know what? The forward, I don't know who this player would be, but they don't even necessarily have to be a part of the long-term future.
No, as I said, a guy with 2 years left on his contract.
Yeah.
You can even have a boost, they didn't get Tyler Toffoli, but a Tyler Toffoli type guy, right? Yeah. A guy who's going to come and he's going to score 25 or 30 goals. It's almost guaranteed, right? It's
well, that's the thing, because you bought yourself. You want to talk about buying yourself grace.
Yeah,
boy, did they smack the grace pitch out of the park with drafting Ivan Demidov. It's kind of feels like right now in this moment, Habs fans really don't care what's happening the upcoming season because they know he's not going to be here next season. Yeah. He's not going to be here this coming season. It's the season after he'll be here. So that's when really the heat is going to get turned up. But you still it's easy to say that now in July versus it's January and the Canadiens are on a 7-game losing streak and it's minus 35 outside and it just snowed 30 centimeters. Then we're talking different stories. So they got to do, it doesn't even, at this point, it doesn't even have to be the Natchez or the Zegras. Just, you got to bring in somebody. Just bring in someone just to add some juice.
Yeah, a guy like Zegras, and I think one of the reasons his name keeps getting mentioned, 23 years old, right? If you bring him here, he's going to be part of the rebuild.
Yes.
He's going to be part of it when this thing gets to the end. But if you can't get him or a guy like that at that age, then you get a guy who's 28 or something. As I said, like a Tyler Toffoli type guy. He's going to come in here. He's going to play 2 years. He's going to score you his 20 to 30 goals. That's what the Canadiens need. Fill a top 6 role, and then allow like an Owen Beck to play a 3rd, 4th line role with the potential to maybe move up and be a top 6 forward. Like I'm not sure if I see Owen Beck as a top 6 forward in the future, maybe a 3rd, but it gives other guys a chance. It gives Joshua Roy a chance to prove that he's a top 6 forward, right, and move up into that area. So, as I said, I don't think Kent Hughes is finished now. I imagine he might catch his breath for a couple of days and maybe go back home, relax, maybe play some golf or whatever, have a beer, or whatever he does to wind down. But I don't think he's done. Like wherever he is, and I'm sure his cell phone's still with him. And he had a funny quote at the draft talking about how his wife says his mind's like a gerbil running on a wheel all the time, and I don't think it ever stops. So it's his wife said you need to shoot the gerbil sometimes, but I'm sure the mind's still racing, and I'm sure he's still he's not. No, Kent Hughes isn't satisfied with the team he has right now going into next season,
and he's not panicking.
And he's not panicking. And Jeff Gorton isn't satisfied with the team they have, but they're not going to panic. They just got through the draft. They just got through the start of free agency. They just got through their development camp. Now it's a time to, as I said, maybe take the weekend or take a few days and just relax and get away from hockey and clear your mind, and then come back maybe next week and say, okay, what do we got that we can get something here to not only excite the players on the team, but also excite the fan base, get the fan base bring back add to the excitement that they already added from the draft with Demidov and Hage and Koivu's son, but something immediate, like that's future. The excitement for the future. They need something to be excited about going into next season.
That's it. And we're going to give our listeners and viewers a chance to take the weekend, chill out, and, listen to this episode, but then take the weekend, chill out, forget about hockey just for 2 days. And then on Monday, when the Sick Podcast is back with Tony, then, we're back on the Habs train. So, Stu, thank you very much for joining me, and enjoy your weekend.
Good advice. Enjoy the weekend.
All right, that's Stu Cowan. I'm Matt Ohayon. Okay, just one last thing to mention. Sammy, throw up the graphic that we have new merch available at sickattire.com. Not allowed to say who's this t-shirt about, but we spoke about him a couple times during the episode, so you guys put 2 and 2 together. I think it's one of the best nicknames ever, especially as someone who is a Elden Ring fanatic. That's a video game on Xbox. Demigods are all over the place in that game, and you kill them with the sword. Oh, it's great video game. All my gamers know. But yeah, so that's at sickattire.com. Now, heed my advice, heed Stu's advice. Take the weekend, forget about hockey. We're months away from real hockey being played. Chill out, but don't forget about us, because we're back on Monday when Tony brings you the Monday edition of the Sick Podcast. Enjoy your weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBita.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.